And hello and welcome to the Talking City podcast with me again and David Tennant again. He's making his triumphant return like he does to Doctor Who every 5 minutes. Today I'm with Mr. Joe Bray. Joe, I take it you've had quite a busy week, quite an eventful week.
Yeah, I feel like I've not stopped. Tottenham on Wednesday, West Brom away in the Youth Cup on Thursday, and recording today, and then press conference and Plymouth on Saturday. So it's busy. I'm aware that those weeks are going to get less busy, but I'm not going to complain that I've been out and about this week, because give it a couple of weeks when there's no midweek game, and we'll be sort of scrambling around for things to talk about. It'll be I'll be dreaming back to these days of being on the road and trains and hotels and lots of games.
Fair, solid, yeah. I like travelling around myself, so yeah. Quite nice. I
didn't like the closure on the M6 at 11 o'clock last night and diverting home. I was just like, this is the last thing I need. So the games are good. The diversions on the motorway at 11, 12 o'clock are not as good.
Yeah, I had it before coming back from the AJ Dubois fight, and pretty much from Birmingham to Manchester was just shut. So we had to go through. Took a long time anyway. Took a long time. What should have been a 3-hour journey took about 6. But anyway, speaking of Tottenham, City won a game. City Anthony turned them over. A little hard fought 1-0 victory with Erling Haaland, who my knee is better inadvertently this week, so I'm guessing he synced up with me somehow. But Haaland's back on the score sheet as well. What are your initial thoughts about the game, and obviously Haaland coming back?
It was a weird one, and I mean last year at Tottenham was if City win, they basically win the title, and all the Tottenham fans kind of wanted City to win as well, and there was a massive buzz around the game, and the press room was full, and you could just feel it was a big game. But it was unbelievably the opposite. Like, I can't stress how flat it was before the game. It didn't. There was people going to the game and journalists there and stuff, but it didn't feel like a big event, because City haven't really got anything to play for in the league and the cups. This game wasn't really going to define the top 4 hopes. As it turned out, it did help them, and the results went away. Tottenham are 12th and aren't really going to do anything themselves this season. So it wasn't a free hit, but it wasn't the big game it has been in the past. And I mean, Tottenham rested Son and Kusenov because they've got the Europa League coming up, and that sort of showed where their priorities were. City arrived with Erling Haaland, and he's got a big smile on his face, and it just seemed like it was a stronger City squad. And I mean, the first half was really, really good. It was a younger City side. It was Doku and Savino on the wings again. It was Haaland back in the middle. Marmoush was doing a lot. He was busy. He sort of wriggles free for the goal, feeds Haaland, who's come deep. I thought Haaland coming deep was really, really effective all night, and it just another thing that they've missed the last couple of games without him. That often goes unnoticed with Haaland. And then Nico Gonzalez is playing a bit further up because he's got Kovacic next to him, so he can sort of play in that number 8 role that we expect him to play next season. With Rodri, he spreads it out to Doku, and then it's in for Haaland to score. And Doku had the beating of Pedro Porro all afternoon, all night. It was I'm surprised Porro didn't go off, because it was a bit like the Alexander-Arnold battle. It was one way, and I think the end product was a bit better from Doku. He gets his assist. He's close to a couple more, and there's a couple of good saves from the goalkeeper. And if City were 3 or 4 up at half time, it would have been absolutely fair. There would have been no doubts about how it was going. I think Postecoglou afterwards was saying, that was the way that the game went. But you just got the feeling that they needed to really get that second or third goal. I mean, Guardiola afterwards, he said, we've been there, we've not killed the game off. We've dominated the first half in Lisbon, in I think other games, another game he mentioned, and then they've lost because the second half hasn't been as good. And there was a sense that it could have been a bit like that. Tottenham come out in the second half and they're better. They bring on Son, they bring on Kulusevski. I mean, Ederson was good in the first half, but he was very, very good in the second half and made a lot of important saves, one in particular from Son. And you're just sort of thinking City are doing well, they're killing the game, they're killing the momentum a little bit, but Tottenham keep coming. And in the end, you think they were a little bit lucky to come out. I think Pep acknowledged that at the end, that they had played very well, but also Tottenham will feel a bit unlucky in the circumstances not to have got anything from the game, especially that chance in the last minute. I was writing our blog, and the Haaland disallowed goal happens, and you can debate whether that's handball or not. I don't think he gets, regardless of whether it's touched his arm or not, he's not gained any advantage because it's been pushed onto his hand. There's a massive long wait, and I wrote in our blog, it's not been given, but it should eat up the time, and City will see this game out and they'll win this. So that's a positive. And as I'm pressing send on that post, Spurs go up the other end, and Sarr heads it over from 6 yards, and that would have been an absolute killer if he'd scored. But they won. Guardiola was absolutely delighted afterwards. I've not seen him that happy in a press conference for quite a while. He loves his new front three. Well, it's not really a new front three, but it's a front three he's not really been able to unleash that often. He loves Nico Gonzalez. He is obsessed with Abdulkadir Kusenov, who had another good game. And it could have been different, but I think they deserve credit for the way that they dealt with the momentum that Tottenham were building, brought on Bernardo to kill it. There was a lot of just half and half fouls that went in City's direction, and the player stayed down for a little bit and just slowed the game down. And they've not necessarily shown that streetwise management in the past when they've been losing these games and throwing these leads away. So I think it's quiet. It will go under the radar. I don't think anyone's noticed it, but that was one thing that stood out to me, was just how well they managed that game given the circumstances. And we've seen this game happen so many times where they've thrown it away. They deserve credit for riding the luck a little bit, but sticking to the game plan and changing things and getting the 3 points.
Well, thanks for coming to talk and see. Yeah, I think you've covered every point I wanted to talk about just then. I was like, cool. Nice.
Are we done?
Yeah, quickest one ever. You described that goal as well, the build up to the goal. I was just like having flashbacks of like playing FIFA. I was like, Jesus, fair play to you.
Do you know what? Yeah. It felt like a move that, I asked Pep afterwards, I said, you're talking about the future and a rebuild. That's got all of your front five are involved in that goal. You've got two young wingers, the £60 million attacker you've just signed, the £50 million midfielder you just signed, and the fella sticking it in the back of the net's just signed a 10-year contract. Is that the future? And he was like, well, that's what we want. He said, we want that front three to be the future. So it did look like, you looked at the bench as well. You've got De Bruyne, Kovacic, Bernardo, Grealish, even Foden, Nathan Ake's on there. It felt like it was a bit of a changing of the guard, and maybe defeat to Real Madrid and even defeat to Liverpool has prompted Pep to just think, we're probably going to get top four, so let's treat this as a pre-season and blood these young players and see who can prove themselves for this new era that is definitely coming over the last couple of weeks.
What a way to bloody players at Tottenham. Jesus
yes,
Christ.
Yeah.
But yeah, Haaland, 20th goal of the season, back firing fit. He's not human anymore. He's still back to a machine. But the defence was really good. Very spirited against a very spirited Tottenham side as well. Stood their ground considering what they've come up against recently with Real Madrid and Liverpool. What do you think stood out about City's defensive performance?
I think it was interesting that Diaz came back, because Guardiola had said he was left out against Liverpool for tactical reasons, which was a surprise. So he was fit, and Guardiola wanted Kusenov instead for his pace, and then he wanted Ake for the left foot, so that meant Diaz dropped out. So Diaz coming back sacrificed that left-footed centre-back, but actually it was the reaction that he will have wanted from Diaz for being dropped for a big game, but also he played really well alongside Kusenov, and it was a bit of an experimental front three from Spurs for 60 minutes, but even afterwards they worked well together. And yeah, Diaz played as you would expect and as you would want him to. Kusenov is, you look at the games that he's started since coming in as this unknown player who's had a year or two in France. Started against Chelsea. We all know how that went. He looked I think it's fair to say, out of his depth with that first minute. But he also looked like he was just shredded with nerves and thrown in a team completely lacking any confidence. But since that first 20 minutes, half an hour, he's barely put a foot wrong, and he's not done perfectly. He wasn't amazing against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu, but he was trusted to start at the Bernabeu against Real Madrid, and he's never played right back in his career. And that's the first time he's doing it, and he held his own in parts. And given the circumstances, you've got to sort of applaud. He started against Newcastle, against Alexander Isak. He started against Liverpool, against their front three, and all the sort of the weaving in and out that their players do. At Tottenham, he's played Heung-min Son in the second half. And I think I was looking on Twitter, I think they've had a bit of history in maybe World Cup qualifying in Asia or something like that, where Kusenov's given Son quite a good game. But there's a growing highlights reel on Twitter where Kusenov, someone loses the ball and a player looks like they're in on goal, and Kusenov appears from nowhere to block it out and slide tackle or launch it out for a throw in, and he's got that pace. And Pep was asked about Kusenov, and he loves him. He's for a lad who doesn't speak English and you can't communicate with him. Every single player went over to him at full time, laughing with him and joking with him. Pep was obsessed that he didn't bring a toothbrush or a wash bag, and he just came to play football, and he wasn't bothered about having any sort of Gucci hair gel or whatever they have in those £1,000 bags that they all make sure they show the cameras. And I'm sure that's a massive thing in the dressing room. I'm sure he got pelters for that, but for us it's just like, well, he didn't bring a toothbrush. What of it? But I think Pep was trying to say he's just completely down to earth. He just wants to play football. He's not bothered about what's happened. He just wants to attack the next duel and win it. And I think they're pleasantly surprised with how he's adapted. And you've just got to look at the games he's played and the opposition he's played and the stadiums he's played in. Pep trusts him ahead of, you have to say, a lot of the other centre-backs. He started ahead of Diaz, now ahead of Ake. He started ahead of Stones and Akanji in previous games, and there's injuries and stuff as well. But you see fans saying he's been City's best defender in the last month, and it is very, very hard to argue with that. He's been good, and I don't think it's relevant to talk about his start against Chelsea anymore, because he's done enough to show that he is far better than that, and that was a blip and just a sort of opening night nerves. So
very, very impressive. Forget the Chelsea one, but he's been very, very impressive. Where do you think? Obviously, you said there's a highlight reel coming up on Twitter. You know, he's getting in there. Where do you think the glass ceiling? Where do you think the ceiling is for Kusenov? I think that's the first time I've ever got his name right as well. So pretty much everything I wanted to say.
Try his first name.
No. Everything I was going to ask you in my question, you've already covered. So, but where do you think the ceiling is for Kusenov?
I think if you asked that for Pep, he would probably turn the question around and try and keep feet on the ground and things like that. I'm not sure they particularly want to say too much, but at the same time, Pep always has that option. And in the last 2 or 3 press conferences, he's been asked about Kusenov, and he's given 2 or 3 minute glowing answers. A lot about his personality, but about his pace and his sort of ability. And I mean, Pep was talking about his ball playing and his passing from the back, and that's the sort of thing that he likes from Nathan Ake and Stones, and especially when Laporte was here, he liked that. And he seems like he could be, especially if we're starting to see him comfortable on the ball, he could be quite a mix of maybe the pace that they've not necessarily had from a defender. Maybe they've had it from Kyle Walker, but he's got the physicality maybe of Diaz. And if he does have the eye for a pass of someone like Laporte or Stones, you're looking at a pretty Pep defender there. I'm not going to say he's going to be the best defender that City have ever had, but you can see why they bought him. I think that's a compliment you can throw at him at the moment. So they will be very happy with how he started. And I think I just want to see him against, with respect to any opposition coming up, a normal team. Not like a big team who've got a big attacker. He's under pressure every time. Just what can he do if he does have time to look for a pass and do that sort of thing. So it'll be, I can see him playing quite a big role towards the end of the season, because if he's done this well against that number of teams, he's going to do, you would think, relatively well against teams who maybe don't have as much to play for at the end of the season. If they're playing a mid-table team, I don't know, they've got Crystal Palace at home, maybe Everton away and Fulham away on the last day. There's teams like that who will be safe. What can he do in those games, and is he going to keep up the level of performance? That might be just as impressive as beating Vinicius in a duel at the Bernabeu for Pep, just to see what his sort of all-round character is like as well.
Speaking of the win, points on the board, top 4 now. I think 1 point off Forest. I think Forest got 40, 48, 47, 48, 48, 48, 47. 40s. No, 48. It is 48. Sorry. Yeah, I did look. We're at City 47, Forest 48, Chelsea 46. He said use this as a pre-season, kind of let the players going forward. Do you think this way they can still secure top 4? Do you think this victory is going to be like the catalyst for the remaining fixtures? Like, I've got the new young boys in. Do you think it is going to be a proven that they are going to get top 4 with this side? And will this victory kind of kick on their season now and put Real Madrid behind them?
Yeah, I think if they'd lost that game and it was 3 in a row and it was another defeat at Tottenham would have beaten City 3 times in the season, and they're not great this season themselves. That probably extends the latest crisis. But just to get the win and show a couple of things that they've not been able to show earlier in the season, I think it's important. And Liverpool beating Newcastle keeps them away, and Arsenal and Nottingham Forest drawing keeps both of them in touch, so they can start looking up the table rather than behind them. And yeah, they're only a point into the top 4, but they've got Forest next, after, sort of in a week or so time in the league. If they can go there and win, that's massive. And if they can sort of keep those teams at arm's length, then that's all they need to do, really. They don't have a title to play for. It would be nice for them if they could push Arsenal in second, who look like they're faltering a little bit. And as much as Arteta says that they're still in a title race, they've not got a striker and have stopped winning games as convincingly as they were. So they might even look at that second place, and that would be an incredible result given how bad they've been at times this season. But I think, yeah, they've got to go to Forest, try and beat them and hope that they fall away. I mean, you've got Bournemouth who are faltering a little bit, and Newcastle have lost a couple to City and Liverpool now. So it's opening up. It would be a massive disappointment if they don't get top 4. And we know top 5 is probably going to be enough for Champions League spot. No Champions League in the middle. They should have, well, they've got no excuse not to finish top 4. But I think Pep's also shown the way forward that he wants to go. And if that is to use his new signings and his young players ahead of the players who he said might not be able to stay because of fitness and injuries, and there's talk of rebuilds and cycles. And I mean, Bernardo spoke this week about generations coming to an end, and he accepts that the club will have to rebuild. And I think it will be probably more of a focus on the young players earning the spot rather than the older players having to fight for their futures. So that'll be an interesting dynamic of how that works and who he gives chances to show what he can do. But it felt like quite a pointed team selection, but also the right one. So those players who are watching on the bench, Gundogan, Grealish come on for a minute, De Bruyne stays on the bench, Ake stays on the bench. They've got to show that they deserve to be in this team when everyone's fit and there aren't as many fitness issues with, a couple of days between games. It's going to be quite, I think, an interesting dynamic in that squad, especially when Guardiola's publicly said we need to sell players and we need to make hard decisions, and we also need to look ahead and lower that sort of age in the squad. So no, it will be, I think the last couple of games against Liverpool and Tottenham have shown the direction he wants to go. So it's up to who is not in the team to decide if they want to go with him or look somewhere else in the summer.
So moving away from the Premier League very, very quickly. Oh, well, it's FA Cup anyway on the weekend, so definitely moving away from the Premier League anyway. Yeah, so we mentioned you've been all over the country this week, or all around the place. So you've been to Tottenham. So was you at the under-18s as well?
Yes, I was at the Youth Cup last night.
Youth Cup, sorry, yeah. I was going to say junior, but I was like, in my head, that's wrong.
It is the under-18s, so it's the competition they won last year. They're in the semi-finals the year before, and they're in the semi-finals again. So if I do the maths, they've lost one game in the competition in about 2 or 3 years. And that game, by the way, was at Arsenal, and they had 10 men for 110 minutes and lost in the last minute. And I mean, looking ahead, the lad who scored the winner for Arsenal was Miles Lewis-Skelly, who's now a first-team player. So there's a lot of mitigation in the one game they did lose. But it's a new-look City side this year. A lot of the team who won last year are sort of 18 and older and not eligible. But I think the third round game they won 1-0 and made a bit hard work of it. Since then, I think it's been 5-1, 6-1, 6-0, and it was 6-0 last night. And City are top of the under-18 Premier League North, and West Brom are bottom of the Southern Division. So it's basically top of the league versus bottom of the league. As soon as City got the first goal after about 35 minutes, they'd won the game. It was 3-0 by half-time, 6-0 at full-time, and it was ruthless. But the star of the show was Finlay Gorman. They signed him from Leeds a couple of years ago, reportedly up to £5 million. So he's a big name, if you like, a sort of a high-profile player in that squad. 2 very, very good long-range goals, and one right at the end. We spoke to him afterwards, and he was saying he was just desperate to get in a position to try and get a hat-trick, and he just pounced in the box. But he was saying it's a statement win for the rest of the country, and they want to keep going and keep blowing teams away. They're top of the league, a couple of points ahead of United, so the double is on. The Youth Cup draw is in a couple of hours after we record this podcast, so it should be out by the time people are listening. The only difficult team that it could face is, on paper, youth games are always difficult, of course, but United play Arsenal. United won it a couple of years ago. Arsenal won it in the final the year before City won it. So the big youth teams, United won the league off City last year, but one of those will go out on Friday. And if City could avoid one of those and meet the other in the final, then it really opens up. But speaking to the players, I spoke to Gorman and to Divine Mikasa, they were like, we don't care who we face, we feel we're a match for anyone, and it will be interesting to see how they go. But there is a massive desire in that squad to emulate what the guys did last year and win that Youth Cup. But there was, Gorman played well. I thought Divine Mikasa, I looked at his record, he's got 14 assists and 14 goals and 23 assists now this season. He's in brilliant form. His manager, Oliver Rice, is very happy with him. But the defence is where that team is very good. You got Stefan Mafuni, who I've never seen have a bad game. Kian Noble, who's going to have, even if it's not a City, you can see him being a Championship Premier League defender very easily. Harrison Parker, they signed from United, and Caden Braithwaite, who's played for the first team, was basically playing as an attacking midfielder at times, a bit like John Stones does. So you can see how they replicate the first team, and it was a very good win, and they are very confident in that squad that they can, if they're not going to win the Youth Cup, they're going to give it a very, very good go, and they're a match for anyone. So, with the first team not playing many games, it will be hopefully something that we can shine a bit of a light on and show what the next generation are doing, because both the under-18s and the under-21s are going quite well in their division. So it could be they could be on for 4 trophies in the academy this season, which would be really good. I don't think they're going to win the youth league. I think they've got a difficult run to the final in that, but the 2 league divisions that they're in and the Youth Cup are definitely within grasp, and that would be a decent return, especially given the first team have struggled for silverware.
Yeah, that's mad. Fair play to them. Fair play to them. More power to them. Can't wait to see them in the Premier League. FA Cup, big weekend, giant killing Plymouth, on the way, knocked out Brentford, knocked out Liverpool. Are they going to knock out City?
If they were at home, I would say maybe they've got a chance. I mean, City made hard work of the Leyton Orient game. I think they're in a bit of a stronger position now. I think being at home, it would be a surprise if they were to get beat. But also, in the past, you would say no. There's no way they're gonna lose. You can't say that in any game this season. So even though Plymouth are struggling, they will go there with 8,000 fans and not have a care in the world. They've just beaten the best team in the world at the moment on form, given that Liverpool are top of the Premier League and top of the Champions League. So they will be very confident of beating a City team who've shown that they are capable of collapsing and conceding. So they can win. I don't think they will. And I think that City having a week until the next game, Guardiola can name whatever team he wants. And I mean, like I say, if you look at the bench at Tottenham, all of those players can come in, and you've got Kevin De Bruyne and Phil Foden and Jack Grealish and Gundogan and Nathan Ake and James McAtee, who you would expect to play, and Nico O'Reilly, and you're looking at a decent team there. Add Khusanov, maybe Vita Rice will play. Your options are good, and then you can bring on Haaland, or you could put Marmoush in. We might see Claudio Echeverri, who arrived this week after a year back at River Plate and a tournament for Argentina. I think he would be an exciting one to maybe come off the bench. I don't think the plan is to maybe start him. Pep will, I'm sure, be asked about his first impressions. I think he's more of a longer term one, but if you are going to give him just a sample of what English football is like, this is a good one to do at home in the FA Cup against a lower league side. So he could be an interesting one. I think, players like Haaland should get a rest, because then you've got him fully fit and firing for Forest. But then you've got players like Grealish and Gundogan and Bernardo and De Bruyne, who are all maybe under pressure a little bit for what happens in the summer. So you will be looking to them to show how they respond to that and what they do. I mean, I was looking at Grealish's record. He's barely started in the league. He's only completed 90 minutes twice. But in the Carabao and the FA Cup, he sort of played every minute and got a goal and 3 or 4 assists. So he needs to get back on the pitch and get a bit of momentum and do something and put in a performance, because Savinho and Doku have shown in the last 2 games that they're ready to take those wing spots for their own, for the future. Guardiola wants that future front three. So what role does Grealish have in it? And I think this is the kind of game where he might not want to be in the position of playing, but he's got to, and he's got to do something and show something, because he did it against Leyton Orient. He got the start against Madrid and then got injured, and then he's only played a minute since, and I don't think he touched the ball at Tottenham. And it's just so many false starts. He needs to run a games. I'm not sure if he's going to get them, but progressing in the FA Cup will help that for him.
I mean, he is. I'd say he's getting on in football terms now. He's about 29, pushing 29, 30.
Yeah, I think he's 30 at the start of next season.
Yeah, I'll say this. I'm 30 and Kevin De Bruyne is 33. So no, we're not getting on a bit but in terms of kickstart of the season or progressing, is like, how much has he got left in that tank realistically on the City side? If Pep is going to bring in this influx of youngsters, are they going to have room for an aging Grealish who you paid £100 million for, who's only going to play in a League Cup?
This is it, and it's the same question for De Bruyne. If you're not playing him at Real Madrid or against Liverpool or at Tottenham, can you afford to have a player on so much money on the bench? And the answer is probably no. I think MEN we put a survey out in the last week or so of, would you offer Gundogan and De Bruyne new contracts? It was overwhelmingly no for Gundogan, but it was more no than yes. It was a quick look at it. I think it was about 60% for no for De Bruyne, and you can see why, because he's struggling for the fitness and the form. So I would love nothing more than for him to be the best player between the end of the season and win City the FA Cup and fire them into the top 4, help them to the Club World Cup and earn that new contract because he's such a good player. But I think he's one of them who, when Pep's saying decisions need to be made, it probably is going to be one of those more difficult ones, but it's sort of a head over heart decision. For Grealish, it's tricky because there is a player there who can play a role that no one else does. But I thought it was telling that Guardiola wanted control against Tottenham and he brought on Bernardo, and it worked. It was a good change. And I know it wasn't very popular with some fans, but he had the desired effect of just nullifying Tottenham's momentum and breaking it up a bit. But that's Grealish's job. Grealish's job is to keep the ball and keep it away from the other goal and apply pressure. And he wasn't asked to do that. And it's not the first time that someone else has been chosen ahead of him. So, there's only so long you can rely on being one of the best players in the treble season with 1.5 seasons plus on from that. And he's not had any meaningful run of games to show what he can do. The start of this season, maybe, but he's still, aside from the domestic cups, he's got 1 goal and 1 assist this season in about 26 games. He's a player that does more than goals and assists, but when you put that record forward, it sort of speaks for itself. And I'm not sure how easy he would be to sell because he's still got a decent contract and he'll be on a lot of money, and that 100 million price tag, they're obviously not going to get 100 million for him, but they're probably not going to get too much back for a 30-year-old who's barely played in 2 years. So yeah, that will be an interesting one this summer. And if he does stay, what role does he play? Because you need players like that to be fit and available, and he isn't. When he's fit, he can do a good job, but there's probably too many players now who are they're running out of opportunities. So I think Saturday will be an opportunity for him to play. It's just how many opportunities he gets in the league going forward after that.
Speaking of Saturday, I asked you last week. I asked Sai this week. Gonna have a little look into Joe Bray's Magic 8 Ball. Scores on the doors. What do you? Because I could have talked more about the FA Cup, but everything I have planned, you've already said without me just mentioning FA Cup. So it's like, cool. I'll just write off my entire notes. So we'll go straight to predictions. Scores on the doors. Shake up Joe's Magic 8 Ball. What are you saying?
I think City will win. I'll get just for the FA Cup, and they'll have a big crowd. I'll give Plymouth a goal, maybe 4-1. 5-1. I think as soon as City maybe get 2 or 3, they might even have the option to bring Haaland on if they want to. And I think they need to prioritise the cup at the moment this season. Their top 4 chances have been massively helped by the results this week. The FA Cup's opening up really nicely in terms of who is left in that competition. You don't say that City are the best because they're capable of losing any game this year, but they will look at that and think we can go very deep and have a chance of winning this. If they end this season with a top 4 finish and an FA Cup win, given everything that's happened, it's not a bad return. So I think they need to go strong. I think they'll rotate, but I think 4-1. Yeah, let's say 4-1.
I'm going to say what I've been saying on every other one. 2-1 to Man City, because one time I will get it right. So Mystic and a Cardiff City Man City final. I know they're playing Villa tonight, but we never know. But yeah, Joe, I won't keep you for much longer. I know you got a press and you got stuff to get on with today, and I've sent you around the houses. So massive thank you to Joe. Don't forget, people watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple or however you consume your podcast, be it radio, vinyl, megaphone, dictaphone, I don't know. Please don't forget to like, comment, follow, subscribe, share with your friends, your nan, your dog, anyone that wants to talk about City. We'll be back on Monday. I don't believe it's either of us on Monday, actually. I said this every other time, and I've always been back, so I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch, but I don't believe it's us, is it? Oh, no, it is. No.
It'll be like a lucky dip of who's talking City on any given podcast.
Well, I live in Manchester and talk a lot of City, so there you go. But yeah, thank you for your time, Joe. And don't forget, if you're on YouTube, like, follow, subscribe, comment. What do you think the score will be? Am I right? Am I going to finally get my prediction right at 2-1? Is Joe right with 84-0? Who knows? But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again on Monday.